Okay, welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today for the launch of the Faith-Based Development Initiative in Seattle. My name is Caroline Hurry, and I'm a Senior Program Officer with Enterprise Community Partners. I'll run through a couple of housekeeping items before we officially begin at 12:05. So during the presentation, we'll ask you to use the Q&A feature if you have questions, and we'll leave time at the end of the webinar to go through as many as we can. We'll also provide our contact information should you have questions after the fact. And although we can't see you on video, we'd still love to know who's here with us today. So please drop your name and your organization in the chat so we can see each other and connect. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the Enterprise website. So we'll begin in just a couple of minutes, officially at 12:05. Thank you all. Welcome to those who've just joined. My name is Caroline Hurry, and I'm a Senior Program Officer with Enterprise Community Partners. Please keep dropping your name and organization in the chat so we can see who's here. As a reminder, we'll get started in just a couple minutes at 12:05. And during the presentation, should you have any questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A feature, and we'll leave time at the end to go through any additional questions. Thanks, everyone. All right, thanks everyone for joining us. It's now 12:05, so I will quickly run through the agenda. Please continue to drop your name and organization in the chat. Loved seeing the long list so far. We've got about 65 attendees, so it's great to see everyone. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Taylor. First up, we'll have Emily Alvarado, our Vice President and Market Leader for the Pacific Northwest, will welcome us and offer a land acknowledgement. Then we'll hear from a few guest speakers from Wells Fargo, St. Luke's Episcopal Church, and the Nehemiah Initiative. Next, Jess Blanche, our Program Director, will run through some of the details of the FBDI program, followed by closing remarks from David Bowers and a Q&A period. Next slide, please. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to today's guests, who we'll hear from in just a moment. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom with us. Also, a quick shout out to Taylor Robinson from our Enterprise team here in Seattle for providing webinar support today. Really appreciate your help. And now I will pass it off to Emily.
Thank you, Caroline. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Emily Alvarado. I'm the Vice President here with Enterprise Community Partners in the Pacific Northwest, where we're working throughout all of Washington and Oregon to help create affordable housing solutions. As many of you know, Enterprise is a national affordable housing nonprofit that really works to address affordable housing from all angles through investment and financing, programs and partnerships, innovation, and policy and advocacy. And right now we run several programs. We work hard to catalyze affordable housing development through our Home and Hope program. We work to invest and create early learning facilities across the state through our Well Fund. We support our community partners through investment of Section 4 grants and other capacity building supports. And now we're so excited to be able to launch our faith-based development initiative to help provide additional resource and partnership to community. I want to emphasize the word partnership. We think of ourselves as your partner in the Pacific Northwest to help create and drive community-driven visions to make the region, the state more affordable, and to help provide a place of home and belonging to everyone. I invite everyone to pause and reflect for a minute as we open this event with a land acknowledgement. We'd like to recognize that we're on the land of the Coast Salish people, the traditional home of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Tulalip, Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Puyallup, Muckleshoot, and Nisqually nations. They have taken care of this land before it was colonized, and they continue to care for, honor, and defend their land. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Coast Salish tribes. For folks in other parts of Washington state, I encourage you to learn about the indigenous land you are on. And if you happen to know it, feel free to include that within the chat. As we move forward today in this conversation, and we have speeches and information from really wonderful local and national community partners, I do want to acknowledge the incredible work right here by the Enterprise Pacific Northwest team. Jess Blanche, Caroline Hurry are really doing such phenomenal work to help launch this program and bring meaningful, real resources to our community partners. So thanks to the Enterprise team. And without further ado, I'd really just like to turn it over to Amy Anderson from Wells Fargo. We are so grateful to Wells for their support of this initiative nationally and their generosity in providing local support so that we can create more affordable housing in partnership with faith communities across the Pacific Northwest. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Emily. It's great to join the webinar this afternoon on behalf of Wells Fargo. We see the Faith-Based Development Initiative as an incredibly impactful program, one that Wells Fargo is super excited about, which is why we awarded Enterprise $8.5 million in grant funding to expand the program to Seattle, in addition to cities like Atlanta, Miami, New York City, and others. Houses of worship are key community anchors and are at the center of many lives. And the leadership of houses of worship and understanding their communities brings a whole new level of innovation to the affordable housing challenge facing Seattle and the nation. Houses of worship are in a unique position to directly address the lack of affordable housing in thriving cities like Seattle. And the Faith-Based Development Initiative will support you in doing it in a way that achieves your vision for advancing community empowerment and community voice and creating impact. One of the things that we think is so special about the program is that it offers houses of worship an opportunity to contribute directly toward growing the number of affordable homes and helping to ease the pressure and anxiety felt by thousands of low-income families and individuals as housing costs soar, especially in a coastal community like Seattle. So we're pleased to support Enterprise in this effort. They have demonstrated a strong respect for houses of worship with this program and are committed to supporting the vision and decisions of individual houses of worship in developing affordable homes, which we know is the right approach. I want to just wrap up by sharing that in 2019, Wells Fargo committed to invest $1 billion philanthropic dollars towards housing affordability. Those dollars are focused on expanding opportunities for home ownership for low and moderate income households, increasing housing stability for both renters and homeowners, growing the supply of homes that are affordable, and then advancing policy and research that supports those three other objectives. The Faith-Based Development Initiative is an outstanding example of the impactful programs that we're supporting, and we are just thrilled to be a part. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Next, we will hear from the Reverend Canon Britt Olson from St. Luke's Episcopal Church. Thanks,
Thank you
Britt.
very much. And they had a preacher kick this off and then gave me only 5 minutes. So I am going to try to stick to that and honor that. I'm so grateful to be part of this today. I am the vicar, the priest at St. Luke's in Ballard. We're in the central area of Ballard. We've been in the Ballard neighborhood for 130 years and on our current piece of land since 1924. And so I just want to first say that faith communities often receive a legacy, a really important legacy from those who have gone before us, who have been part of the community, who have loved the land and the property and the houses of worship that are there. And we have both a responsibility and an opportunity to be faithful stewards of their generosity and their wishes and dreams for the future of their faith community. And I think that's part of what Enterprise is partnering with us to help us to do. We want to do well by doing good. And in order to do that, I think it's critical that we spend time discerning our vision and our mission and our core values at the beginning of any process of determining how to plan for the future of this legacy gift, which is our land and our property. At St. Luke's, we took an entire year to do a process of appreciative inquiry. And we had conversations not only with all of our parishioners as individuals and in groups, but with the people who use our property for in partnership with us, or our guests at our feeding program, our neighbors, our business community, our service groups in the neighborhood, to develop really a vision that encompassed the entire community. We are an anchor property right in the center. And what we do impacts residents, businesses, housed and unhoused people in our neighborhood, and will impact for a century to come. So involving that whole community in a process of discernment is where we began this entire exploration of what to do with our land. And then we looked for partners. We wanted to find partners who would share the values that, or where their values would align with our values, so that we could find the right professionals, the right partners to explore and build out our vision for the future. And that took time and a lot of interviewing and a lot of research. Enterprise was really critical at the very beginning in helping to provide that support financially as we were looking at the value of our land and the parts of how our land could be used. And so we were grateful early on to meet with them. We also wanted to make sure that we are looking in terms of a long-term vision. We've been around in this neighborhood for 130 years, but the church has been around for thousands of years, and many faith communities even longer than the Christian church. And so we wanted to look at how do we both control our land for the future and to consider a variety of options. What's the best way for us to look into the future? So now you can put up the slide, please, Taylor. What we will be doing is we have partnered with Bridge Housing to build 80+ units of affordable family housing, 30 to 60% of average median income on a portion of our land. The rest of the land will be used for a multi use development of residential and church space, and hopefully some affordable childcare. And we are going to be the first in our neighborhood, in our district, to first place to build affordable family housing. We'll have 3-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units, and some studios. We are grateful that Enterprise got us started on this journey and thankful for the opportunity to continue it until we are able to move families in and then continue to build relationships and build beloved community in our neighborhood. Thank you so much. And if you have questions or want to talk to us at St. Luke's, I'll put my email address in the chat. Feel free to contact us.
Thank you, Britt, for your leadership and for sharing your experience and being willing to talk to anyone. Next, we will hear from Donald King from the Nehemiah Initiative.
Good. Well, thank you, Caroline. Wanted to let everyone know how excited I am about this launch, and pleased to be here to talk to you a little bit about the Nehemiah Initiative and part of the role that we're playing in being able to provide affordable housing on faith-based property. The Nehemiah Initiative has a mission to support the retention of the historically Black church in Central Seattle. And within that mission of being able to support that retention and the community that those churches serve that are threatened with displacement from gentrification, the church is really looking at two prime objectives. One being able to save the Black church. And the Black church is the anchor and the nexus of the Black community and has been for hundreds of years. It's the oldest institution, the oldest Black institution, in the first place that enslaved people were able to gather and organize, even in resistance of their enslavement, and has had that gospel of social justice for the amount of time that it has existed. And it is still the oldest and largest Black organization in the country. Also functions that way in Seattle as well. And the retention of the Black church is our prime objective because these churches matter. These churches matter to the cohesion of the community, and being able to take on this additional challenge of social justice to stem the rate of gentrification caused displacement is just one part of the social justice mission of the church. And being able to do that, that other prime objective that we have of the two major prime objectives is to provide affordable housing on property that churches have been blessed with. We have estimated that historically Black churches in Central Seattle have property in excess of $150 million in value, and acres of land that can produce, that have the capacity to produce hundreds of units of housing, of affordable housing. We have 4 churches that are what we call the pre-prepared churches. These churches have been through something that we started at the University of Washington called the Nehemiah Studio. It's an interdisciplinary studio in the College of Built Environments that really begins the exploration, the preliminary studies of church properties by putting to work and to the education of graduate students in architecture, urban design and planning, landscape architecture, and real estate in the college that then begin to produce visions for properties, financial analysis for properties, and working directly with the church clients. From this, we have been able to inspire 9 churches to be serious about development. And 4 of those churches we're carrying forward in the next year, seeking pre-development services to begin their journey to development of affordable housing and affordable commercial spaces as well. This is just the tip of the iceberg for us, and we are looking at a number of signature programs to help and assist our churches in being able to develop affordable housing on their property. The Sankofa Community Development Fund is one of those. We're seeking to be an intermediary of funds to be able to fund the churches for pre-development services and other needs that they have. The Leadership and Development Program that will be working directly with Enterprise community partners here in Seattle on training church leadership in the basics and the fundamentals of affordable housing development. Our home ownership program will also be working in collaboration and partnership with other local home, particularly Black home ownership initiative advocates, and providing home ownership opportunities on these church properties as well. The Nehemiah Initiative is not a developer, but we will act very closely with our churches as a development advisor in helping them to assemble teams, development teams of developers and architects and others that are going to be necessary to bring these projects into fruition. So our community outreach effort is going to be fairly strong for the second half of this year, along with being able to launch those additional signature programs. And we really appreciate the help that we get from Enterprise community partners locally here and our national connection as well, with getting the work done that is so vital and is so urgently needed here in Seattle. Jess, I'd like to pass this off to you to talk a little bit more about what we're doing here in Seattle.
Thanks, Donald. Thank you so much. We are so excited to be partnering with the Nehemiah Initiative to support their work with Black churches in Seattle. The Nehemiah Initiative board chair, Bishop Gary Tyson, sits on our national advisory group for the Faith-Based Development Initiative, and they've really been helping guide our work and our thinking about how we roll this program out here in Seattle. My name is Jess Blanche. I'm a program director here at Enterprise Community Partners in the Pacific Northwest market. Taylor, we'll go to the next slide, please. Our faith-based work here in the Pacific Northwest market builds on our Home and Hope initiative to catalyze the development of affordable homes and community facilities on public and tax-exempt land. While doing this work, we have heard from many local houses of worship and faith-based organizations that there is a real desire to look at more ways to support the community with faith-owned land, specifically through affordable housing. But there's also a need for expertise and community capacity to bridge between faith communities and real estate development. At the same time, our national faith-based development initiative has been growing and gaining momentum, expanding nationally with the assistance of funders like Wells Fargo. We're so grateful to be part of this national expansion and to be able to bring resources and support to our local faith-based organizations who are considering affordable housing development on their properties. Our goals with the program include supporting new interest from faith-based organizations through training and technical assistance around affordable housing development, empowering existing local faith-based organizations that are already exploring affordable housing development, including the work of the Nehemiah Initiative, through investment and partnership, facilitating connections between mission-aligned community development organizations and faith organizations who want to redevelop their land, and connecting faith-based initiatives to broader housing funding and strategies, supporting the momentum to increase community capacity and development. We'll go to the next slide. So this program will include training, technical assistance, and tools for understanding the development process from start to finish, the opportunity for peer-to-peer learning and fellowship among faith-based organizations pursuing this work, referrals to local partners who faith-based organizations may choose to work with to advance their projects, and access to grant funding and enterprise capital products to help faith-based organizations move their projects from vision to completion. As part of the Faith-Based Development Initiative, we have grants of up to $40,000 that will support early feasibility and pre-development costs. We'll go to the next slide. So the training program includes 3 components. There's live training that's tailored to the learning needs of the participants. We understand that getting into real estate development may be a really big undertaking. It is a really big undertaking, and we want to ensure that folks understand what they're getting into and understand what kinds of decisions they'll have to make. So this curriculum that we have developed is really tailored to be able to create opportunities for folks to understand where they really need to learn in depth. There's also case studies of real faith-based development projects from around the country that will share lessons learned and provide inspiration. And there will be online tools that can be accessed at any time to help participants apply what they're learning to their own projects. We'll go to the next slide. So our goal is to provide support in ways that are helpful to you. And our first step as we launch here is to assess interest and needs in the local community, whether that's training, technical assistance, partnership, funding, or all of the above. We will have an interest form live on our website by June 15th, which will also be emailed to all webinar participants, along with a recording of the webinar. We ask for information about your property, organization, development vision, development status, and board and leadership setup. The goal is to assess where each of you are in your development journey and provide us with as much information as possible to evaluate your submission. Please send us any questions you may have as you work through the application form, and we will be happy to answer them. By the end of June, we'll post an FAQ that will address questions that have come in during the first couple of weeks of the application period. Our team will review submissions and contact organizations by mid-August. And our initial geographic focus is on faith-based organizations considering affordable housing and community facilities in King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties. Although we would love to hear from anyone outside this area who is working on this space so that we can track interest for future program expansion. If you're not a faith-based organization, but have a specific interest in working with faith-based organizations on development opportunities, please email me at jblanche@enterprisecommunity.org, and I'll drop my email in the chat in a moment. So before we go into questions and answers, we'll hear from David Bowers, Vice President and Market Leader from the Enterprise Mid-Atlantic office.
Great. Many thanks, Jess. I appreciate it. It is a real honor to be with folks. I'm here in Washington, D.C., so as we like to say on the East Coast, the other Washington. But it's good to be with you all, seriously, and I'm honored to be here. I want to thank, first of all of you all who are attending. It's great to see such a robust turnout on the webinar. So thanks for taking of your time to learn more about this opportunity. And want to thank my colleagues, Emily, Jess, Caroline, and Taylor for all the work they've done to get us to this point. Listen, I'm glad to be here because today really is another step on a journey to nurture and grow not just a program, but really a national movement of supporting houses of worship who are activating their land to build affordable housing and/or community facilities. It's what I like to call radical common sense. We've got such a need, and as Donald King even referred to, there's so much land that is owned by houses of worship in every community across the country. that need meets opportunity. We started the Faith-Based Development Initiative at Enterprise back in 2006, and our goal was to get new units of affordable housing and community facilities built working with houses of worship who had undeveloped or underdeveloped land. And our approach was to really help them make an informed go or no-go decision. And if they decided to go forward, to help connect them to the right types of intellectual and financial capital, or as I like to say, dollars and cents with an S, that will help them move from that visioning process to ultimately the opening and then the good operations of properties that serve our community. I always like to share with people that when I went through seminary at Howard University, I took a class in New Testament. I can talk to you about Old Testament, systematic theology with Cartwright Davis. Took a class in Greek that beat me down, and even took a class on counseling where we literally learned, among other things, how to counsel people who are dying. But I tell you what I didn't take in seminary. I didn't take a class on how to run a pro forma or a development spreadsheet. I didn't get a class on how do you negotiate a joint venture partnership when you're trying to build 100 units of housing on your church's parking lot. We didn't get that. And so to me, this really ties into, and I'm connecting dots here in this story, the pastor who raised me in ministry, Reverend Dr. Joaquin Willis, was the founding vice president of an organization called the Collective Banking Group, now called the Collective Empowerment Group. And years ago, many, many years ago, a group of predominantly Black churches in Prince George's County, Maryland, were coming together to figure out how they could leverage the economic strength and the land assets of the institutional church for the benefit of community. So at a young stage in my career, was able to get exposed to clergy leaders and lay leaders who were trying to navigate these waters and the lessons they were learning, the challenges and the breakthroughs that they were having. So I share that story with you to let everybody know that I don't believe there's any accident that I and we are here together today. Since 2006, we have literally, we started in Washington, D.C. and have grown in the Mid-Atlantic region between kind of Baltimore and Washington, D.C., Maryland, D.C., Virginia. We have literally engaged with hundreds of houses of worship. We've done trainings for years and gone deep with dozens of houses of worship. We've had 15 projects completed with over 1,500 plus units of affordable housing, as well as some mixed use developments, including a 3-story building built on a church's parking lot that has 2 floors of a health clinic, and the top floor is a banquet and meeting hall space. So we've seen all kinds of development happen. We've shared training and information, and we've listened and learned, and we've developed and evolved the cohort model that is the basis of what you heard Jess share about. So there are things that we do now and offer now that we didn't 5, 10 years ago as we continue to learn and grow. And we'll continue to do that as we look at what types of training, what types of consulting and owner's rep help, what types of pre-development grants can most help folks in the early stages and even after they've secured a development partner. What types of bullpens do we need to have in the professionals? The beauty is that we have lessons that have been learned that will be shared across a network of cities that you heard referred to by Amy in our cohort. So you will be learning as people sign up and are hopefully accepted into the program. You'll learn from not only the instructors, but you'll learn from each other, as Jess alluded to. But you'll also be sharing lessons one with another with literally houses of worship across the country. And I want to say a special words of thanks, speaking of across the country, to our friends, to Amy and her colleagues at Wells Fargo for playing such a critical role in making this long-term 5-year investment in this work, in our ability to go wider and to go deeper in multiple cities around the country. It was a big deal, literally and figuratively, to get that kind of support from Wells Fargo to help us expand. So I really want to say a special word of thanks to them. So think about that the insights you'll be getting and sharing, Atlanta, Baltimore, DC, Miami, New York, and in Seattle. We've also got some work that is happening, and we're working to build up support even in Detroit and New Orleans, around and Denver. So you will be a part of a movement and a national network with national learnings that are shared, but grounded in that local context. Donald King referred to, right? There's a local context, there are local relationships, local collaboration. I always tell people it's one thing to hear about someone from a different city, but when you can hear from Reverend Cannon Olson about the development they're doing in your hometown, right down the street or across the city, and hear about where do you go when you go to the permitting office? Is it window 2 or is it window 4? Because it may be window 3 and window 5 in DC, but in Seattle, it may be 2 and 4. So to hear and learn from local partners. So it's great to see the Nehemiah Initiative will be part of this collaboration and this work. I'm excited about that with Donald and the colleagues there. It's just a tremendous opportunity. So let me wrap with this. I want to share something just so people have, I think it's really important to understand the historical context of things. That Enterprise was actually grew out of a faith-based encounter over 40 years ago when 3 women in the Church of the Savior community in Washington, D.C. encountered a successful for-profit real estate developer, Jim Rouse, and they wanted to preserve 2 buildings as affordable for low-income people in a neighborhood that today it's like they had a crystal ball. It's one of the more expensive neighborhoods in one of the more expensive cities in the country. And Mr. Rouse did what any good developer would do. He ran the numbers. The story goes that he came back and said, that doesn't pencil out, doesn't make any economic sense. And I always say, never doubt the power of 3 women in a house of worship. And more to the point, when underwriting said no, God said yes. And so those women went and raised and put down a non-refundable deposit on those buildings and then said to Mr. Rouse, what are you willing to do? And it literally changed his life. And he thought, what if we couple for-profit business discipline with the faith to serve? And that's really how Enterprise got started. And so you fast forward to 40 years later, doing a faith-based development initiative out of the Enterprise platform makes all the sense in the world. But unfortunately, what we see is that there is still a great need that exists in cities like Seattle, Washington, D.C., all across the country, where so many people are living housing cost burden and struggling to meet needs. And I always tell people, it's like the healing at the gate called Beautiful. The folks are familiar with that story, right? Where there is a man who is literally suffering on the steps of the church. Right? So many of us literally go in and out of our worship places, walking by and in some cases stepping over need that is all around us. So we are seeing that. But in the same sense of that story, we can use what God has blessed us with. You've heard that referred to by several speakers. How can we be best stewards of the land that God has entrusted us with to try to meet those needs that are in the community? Maybe you're in a food desert. You need to build a grocery store. Maybe like the church I referenced, they were in a health desert and needed to provide affordable health services in their area. And of course, affordable housing needed in so many places. So we want you to know that we at Enterprise are going to be working with you. We've been at this a long time. It is literally in our corporate DNA. I want people to understand with eyes wide open. Is this work difficult? Absolutely yes. Just like in the story of Nehemiah, I tell people before Nehemiah built, remember, he had to pray, right? Pray and repent. So we won't preach that sermon, but there's prayer. So yes, it is difficult, absolutely, but it's also eminently doable. It's eminently doable. And part of this process with the Faith-Based Development Initiative is you will be tying into a network of professionals who see this really as a calling to meet needs that are out here, who have the understanding and some expertise, and also have relationships with others who have expertise and integrity, because that is critical, who will help you move along this journey and get to a place. It has been a pleasure for me to see churches and houses of worship, big and small, Black, white, multicultural, mosques and temples, connectional polities and congregational polities. And for all of the uniquenesses and nuances, it is also interesting to see that there is a lot of similarity of what you will see. So I would say welcome to this work. We look forward to being and working with you. And I look forward personally to being a resource to my colleagues in Seattle, our partners like Reverend King, and again, want to thank our friends at Wells Fargo. So God bless you all and look forward to working with you.
Wow. Thank you so much, David. I was going to say we're running a little early, so if you want to keep preaching, we can keep going.
Yeah, I'll pass the collection plate, so don't make that offer.
Well, thank you so much. So we are so happy to have all of these wonderful voices on our launch webinar today. And we'd really like to take questions now. I'm sure folks have lots of questions. And so, David, if you wouldn't mind staying on in case people have questions about sort of FBDI nationally, that would be really great. So Caroline, what have we got in the Q&A? Let's take a look. I know there are a couple of questions that have come in. I would love to see some more in the Q&A, but I will start off with this one from Lawton Friedman. Our church is still discerning which developer we'd like to partner with. Does participation in the FBDI program require that we ultimately partner with Enterprise for the development step?
Thanks for that question. I'll start, and then David, maybe if you have other thoughts about what happens in other communities. But I really want to make clear that our goal in this initiative is to support you and give you the resources to make your best decisions about who to partner with, whether to partner, and how to proceed. What our goal is to give you the tools to be able to interview developers, the tools to understand which questions to be asking as you go on this journey, but not to dictate any partnerships at all. I really think, we are an intermediary, and I think one of the important roles of an intermediary is to meet community where they are and to figure out how we adapt our resources and services to help you on your journey. So that's why we think of this as a really flexible program and support network to help different faith communities move forward in different ways.
Yeah, Emily, I'll co-sign on what Emily said. That's exactly right. And it is critical for people to understand that there used to be an old commercial that used to say an educated consumer is our best customer. What we're trying to do is not make people experts in this, but we're trying to make you comfortably conversant and understanding the process, understanding the players, and understanding the steps that you need to take to do exactly what Emily said. So people sometimes will think, oh, well, we got to take Enterprise's financing, or we've got to work with them as developer. No, you should always shop around. That's a message you'll hear constantly from us. You should have your own lawyer, right? These are some of the stories, the lessons you'll learn. And so as Emily said, we're trying to help you get equipped to make informed go, no go decisions. When people come in and say, I got a guy I know and he can help me out. Did you shop around? Right? You don't buy the first house you like. You don't buy the first car. You need to shop around, get informed. So just because they know you, just because we know you, just because we're providing a class or a workshop or a grant, doesn't mean you automatically go with our financing. We want to help you understand the process so that you can make good and informed decisions. And so that'll be a role we play.
Great, thank you. Next, I'll go to this question from Evelyn Allen. This is regarding training/technical assistance. Would you work with the entire church development team or one identified person? So our goal, especially with the training and technical assistance, is to work with a group of people from each faith-based organization, especially because, when you're working in a house of worship and you're making decisions, often those decisions are happening through a group discernment process. And we also just want to make sure that the learnings are being shared among several people in a congregation or in an organization. So as you'll see in the interest form, we have a request for 2 to 3 people from any organization to make the commitment to participating, so that information can be shared and so that conversation can be one of a group. And I think for especially the technical assistance piece, I think, if there's a development consultant or if it's enterprise staff, we're certainly obviously willing to meet with multiple people at a time, so we can definitely work with a group of people.
And I'll say we've learned one of the lessons learned over the years, and again, this has evolved for us, and in the cohort approach, having typically the clergy leader as one of the two or of the three, but then a couple of lay leaders for exactly the reason that Jess described, we have found to be a real helpful approach, so that multiple folks are hearing. So people need to be willing to commit that time. One of our colleagues, Reverend Joe Williams, who manages our program here in the DC area, tells the story about how, unfortunately, he had to ask a pastor who raised him in ministry, had to tell him he didn't make the cut in the program, and then had to actually ask one of our sweetest longtime participants to no longer be in the program. Why? Not out of any meanness or spite, but because they just weren't able to commit the time that's necessary. And so it's understand and to be really clear, the notion of you want to do a $15 million development transaction, but if you can't find the time to invest an hour here or 2 hours there, right, over the course of time, then maybe this isn't the time for you to do a project, right? You got to make sure that key decision makers in the organization have the ability to commit the time and the attention to get involved, get engaged, get up, get aware of things, if you would. And to be clear also, you're going to be looking to use other people's money, right? You're going to be trying to get a grant from Enterprise that's coming from Wells. If you're going to go to government and start asking for loans and the like, people want to know that you know what you're talking about. And I'll be very clear, and we've had several clergy say this. Oftentimes when clergy walk in to see a banker, when you walk in to see a developer, when you walk in to see a government housing official, they don't think you know what you're talking about, right? Oh, Reverend so-and-so, this is not what they do. They don't know. You weren't trained in that, and you probably weren't. And so oftentimes they won't take you seriously. And so you're already fighting upstream against that. And that's just kind of real talk. So you do really want to make sure that you've got, you're serious about this undertaking or ready to kind of gird your loins and get ready for the process.
Great, thank you. A question from Kristen Joyner. As part of the process, is there education for cities to understand how they can contribute in partnerships with faith communities as well, or training for faith communities who are buying land from a city and lobbying with staff and councils? Yes, so our technical assistance, and especially our interest form, is really geared towards figuring out what you need help with and working to address that. So one of the things that we didn't mention in the webinar is that Washington State actually has a requirement that cities include a density bonus for affordable housing that is built on faith-owned land. Seattle has passed a policy around that, but currently we are not aware of other jurisdictions who have specifically created policies around that. So we can certainly help with advocating and educating our local officials on how they can best meet that requirement, and then also and how they can consider surplusing their land for affordable housing that might be available or might be developed by a faith-based organization.
I'll add one thing, which is that, as David mentioned, local context and local experience really matters. And from running the Home and Hope initiative for many years in Washington State, we've seen the benefits of providing both technical assistance and supports to nonprofit organizations that are pursuing development, and also to cities to help them consider ways in which they can use their land to meet affordable housing objectives as well. So we're happy to continue in that vein and in that spirit to bring together multiple stakeholders and explore ways that we can create really meaningful partnerships to support affordable housing in partnership with faith-based communities.
Great. Our next question comes from Barbara Bailey. What is the approach with Wells Fargo regarding some of the funding? Is it just through grants or just application?
Jess, do you want to jump in? The funding is funding now that we will be administering through this program. Jess can talk a little bit more about what that process looks like and the scope and scale of the grants.
So we have grants to help with feasibility and pre-development costs of up to $40,000, and also the ability to grant some funds around market studies and early feasibility, as well as sort of more pre-development costs. So that would come through us, and that would be something that if you are interested in and have a need for, then I think please just send us your interest, and we will get in touch with you about where things are at and talk through what the options are.
And I'll add on to that. There, part of the model that we've built up here too is this notion of the ability to walk with folks over time. And so it is this notion of there is the classroom instruction, market study feasibility grants. So again, to make that informed go, no go decision. We got a vision about doing senior housing. Is there a need for senior housing? What's the zoning? Does it allow for that? We want to do family rental. Is there a demand for it? How easy is it to get it financed? Things like that, so that the house of worship can say, yes, we do want to do this, or no, we don't want to do that, based on that information. And then, as Jess said, some of that early pre-development, very early pre-development expenses sometimes can be hard to get money for. So it's a little bit to prime the pump as you're working with. And we've built into the model a consultant who will work with you, and you've got folks like Donald King and the folks at Nehemiah Initiative who will be able, it sounds like, to assist folks in helping to think about what are some of the key decision points in the early stages. What are the questions you need to ask? Who are the professionals you need to get connected with? And so that notion of walking with you over time, that is going to be helpful with folks.
And from Nancy Miller, we have a question: is FBDI interested in perching church property? No. So our goal here is to help houses of worship make their own decisions about what to do with their land. If that decision is to sell the property for the use of affordable housing, we can certainly connect folks with developers, mission-aligned organizations who can develop that land and purchase that land from you. I think one of the things that Britt has said is that there's also the opportunity for the faith organization to steward that land over the long haul with like a land lease kind of situation, so that the land maintains, the faith organization maintains control of the land and maybe receives a long-term payment. So there's lots of different options, and these are things that we can talk with you about if you let us know some more of your details.
And Jess, you know, the power of this network, as you, again, as houses of worship who get accepted into the cohort, and you get into this network, the lessons you can share with each other in your own region, but also from around the country. So for example, there's a Presbyterian church right outside of Washington, D.C. in Arlington, Virginia, that was looking to shut down, right? To kind of go out of business, quote unquote, and sell their land. And they negotiated with the Presbyterian, with a local nonprofit developer. And long story short, they ended up, the land is now used for affordable housing, but they decided to, instead of kind of shuttering their doors, to stay open as a congregation, if you would, and they actually have some space in this mixed use development where they now are still able to worship. There's affordable housing there. There's a training facility, kind of a workforce training facility for a cooking program in the area. So it's an interesting just story, right? Of like, there may be another option. And again, we're compiling some of these lessons and stories, and we'll be doing that for around the country and some of the case studies that are happening, so that folks will have the benefit of learning from and can be in touch with folks, again, not only in your own area, but from around the country, who may be able to provide some insights.
Great. There's a comment here in the question in the question and answer box that I just want to lift up from Carrie Williams. She says, I really just wanted to put forward the developers on the call that faith-based community grounded organizations are likely to make great partners for the 4% program, the LIHTC program. The commission is supportive of this great work. So thank you, Carrie. And then a question from Daniel Schmidt. My organization is faith-based, but not a church. We do have property. Since we're invited to the events, just wanted to make sure, do we qualify for this initiative? The answer to that is yes. So please just let us know, send us your interest form, and we are happy to evaluate and have more conversations with you. Great. From Brianna Brannon, does Enterprise FBDI work with regional groups or bodies, part of a regional entity organizing cohorts of churches who are discerning around land use? Would there be ways for our regional group to connect versus individual churches? Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the goals of our program here in Seattle, is we really want to be helping to support groups that are already doing this work on the ground. And that discernment piece is so important. That's one of the things that Britt mentioned. Making the decision to change the use of your land to include housing is a big one to make. And it's one that takes a lot of time and discernment and community. So I think we are thrilled to be able to support organizations who are working in that kind of capacity. So please reach out.
I'm going to put even a finer point on this. If you are wondering whether you might qualify or whether we have a way of working with you, please just apply, because our goal is to really lift up the multiple creative pathways and partnerships by which we can achieve shared goals. And I think there are many ways to do that, through regional partnerships, through city co-partnerships, through faith-based nonprofits, and through churches specifically at an individual scale and at a group scale. So we're looking to invest creatively, to be creative with the way that we're giving technical assistance and support. So please don't pre-disqualify yourself. Reach out to us, and we'd love to think through how we can create a partnership.
Exactly. And I think our interest form is also meant to be flexible enough to receive information and work through your specific situation and tailor what FBDI could look like for you specifically. David, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that dovetails onto a comment I saw in the or a question in the chat from Gerald Daniels, who asked if we already have a development team. Is the TA still a requirement? And I think to Emily and Caroline's point, you should apply, right? Fill in the form, and then the local team will look at kind of what makes sense or doesn't, and whether or not the fit is for you in the cohort, or if it's not in the cohort, but the ability to look at ways to potentially still work with you and be of service to you. So to Emily and Caroline's point, definitely please, plug in, fill it out, submit it, and it's because it's not a one size fits all.
Exactly. And we are right at 12:59, so I don't want to go over our time together. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with us, and I'll pass it to Jess to close us out. Yeah, so again, just want to reiterate our thanks to you for joining us today. Please email me. My email is here on the, I'm typing it on the email or on the slide. And let me just finish this so I can finish my thought here. enterprisecommunity.org. There we go. And Ed, sorry, the House Bill 1377 was passed in, Emily, help me out, 2019. So you have to change the year, I think, or 2018. You have to change the year on the legislation, but we will follow up with more information and try to answer the questions that we didn't get to in the Q&A. So a recording of this and questions will go out, questions and answers will go out in the next several days, and the interest form should be live by June 15th, and we'll also send out an email about that. And thank you again for joining us. Thank you to all of our guests who joined us today and shared their time and wisdom. And we are really looking forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you so much.